Hi everyone, I'm Toby Capwell, Curator of Arms and Armor here at the Wallace Collection, and today I'd like to talk with you about what is perhaps the greatest success story in the whole history of armor. Amongst the many treasures of the Wallace Collection are 7 armors, all made by the same master. 3 displaying these distinctive steel shields built onto the area of the left shoulder are for jousting, when 2 mounted knights charged each other with lances, the idea being to strike one another as hard and as accurately as possible on the shield or the helmet. Another 3 were designed for the tourney, a combat fought on horseback with swords. You can see the evidence of this in many places, where the steel has been slashed and gouged by repeated sword blows. Finally, completing the set of 7 is this magnificent armor. This is the only one of the group to carry this fabulous etched and gilt decoration. This armor is made up of pieces from a larger garniture, an armor system which could be used for many different forms of fighting, both in tournaments and on the battlefield, using a diverse range of extra parts or exchange pieces. The upper body of this armor was designed for tournament combat at the barrier, a waist-high fence that separated the fighters, preventing grappling and generally keeping the fight clean. Barrier combats were normally fought first with spears and then with swords. We can recognize this breastplate as one specifically designed for barrier fighting because it has this flange, specifically intended to prevent spears glancing off the breastplate into the gap in the right shoulder. Now, jousting breastplates have this feature too, but those are fitted with lance rests, which this one is not. Also, this breastplate is very light, only 2.5 kilograms, while the ones on the jousting armors weigh between 6 and 8 kilos. Leg armor wasn't worn for barrier combat. The leg armor we see mounted here belongs to the battlefield configuration of the garniture and was probably added in the 19th century by the dealer who put the pieces together as they are now. In several places, these armors carry the mark of a triskelion, 3 converging human legs. This is the mark of Anton Pfaffenhauser, one of the most important armorers of the second half of the 16th century. He was born in 1525 in Bavaria and possibly learned the craft of armor making as an apprentice in the Augsburg workshop of Desiderius Helmschmied, a great master and court armorer to the Emperor Charles V. Amazingly, the young Anton became a master himself at only 19 or 20 years of age. He then went on to enjoy a long and successful life, spanning the next 60 years. In that time, he made legions of fine armors, many of which survive today. He also had 2 wives and 14 children. Pfaffenhauser's earliest works as an independent master survive only as fragmentary pieces now scattered across the world. Crucially, however, his early career is also recorded in this glorious watercolor album, the work of Jörg Zorg, an etcher who worked for a number of different armorers in Augsburg. In it, Zorg records his work as an armor decorator and helpfully includes notes on which armorers he was working with on particular projects and for whom each armor was made. The Zorg album's record begins in 1548. The first mention of a collaboration with Pfaffenhauser comes in 1550 with a field armor made for one Don Alba de Beaumont d'Assa. This client has not been traced, although the Beaumont family may have come from Navarre in northern Spain. The following year was a busy one for Pfaffenhauser and Zorg. who together produced armors for Stefan Doria, Jean de Longueval, Baron de Vaux, and Garcia de Toledo, Marquis de Villafranca, all very prominent noblemen in the service of the Emperor Charles V, who was also King of Spain. After the retirement of Charles V in 1556, the Spanish nobility stopped buying armor in Augsburg, and many of the armorers there faced financial hardship or even went out of business. Anton Pfeffenhauser was one of the few who managed to stay afloat. He worked on further commissions with Jörg Zorg in 1558, 1559, and 1563, with his clients now coming mostly from the German lands. In 1561, he received the first of many orders from Ferdinand II, Archduke of Tyrol, and from 1564, he increasingly found favor with the Archduke's brother, the new Emperor Maximilian II. In 1571, Pfeffenhauser attracted an important new patron in Charles I, Duke of Bavaria, who ordered a whole series of armors for grand tournaments and courtly spectacles. In 1579, the Duke commissioned Pfeffenhauser to make 7 white garnitures, that is, tournament armors of polished steel with no decoration, and he was paid for this order the following year. Although the history of the plain Pfeffenhauser armors at the Wallace Collection is very complicated, it's possible that some or all of the pieces used to compose them come from this Bavarian series. They were said to have been given to Napoleon Bonaparte by his ally, the King of Bavaria, in the early 19th century, but they only arrived after Napoleon's abdication and ended up on the commercial market in Paris, later making their way to England. Meanwhile, the etched and gilt decoration on the 7th Wallace Collection armor is comparable to that on a series of 12 foot combat armors Pfeffenhauser made in 1591 for Elector Christian I of Saxony, another impressive patron who held lavish tournaments at his court at Dresden. Anton Pfeffenhauser died in 1603 after an extraordinary career and unrivaled output. At his death, he left us one final piece of evidence of his life and identity, his funerary monument. It survives today in the Museo Correr in Venice. Here we have a portrait of Pfeffenhauser himself, kneeling in prayer with his family. His coat of arms stands next to him, a shield bearing the Triskelis device that he also used as his maker's mark. The heraldic helm rests atop the shield and carries a most fitting crest, the image of an armorer, hammer in hand, with a newly forged helmet in the other, a fitting memorial to one of the greatest and most successful armorers in history. Thanks for joining us, everyone. If you'd like to see more armor set within one of the greatest collections of art in the world, do come and see us sometime at the Wallace Collection. Bye for now.